Greetings and welcome to another installment of City Lights Live, the online edition of the City Lights events calendar. I'm your host, Peter Maravellis, and on Monday, March the 10th, 2025, City Lights had the distinct pleasure of hosting Ronald J. Deibert, celebrating the publication of his new book, Chasing Shadows, Cyber Espionage, Subversion, and the Global Fight for Democracy, published by Simon Schuster. This event was co-sponsored by Citizen Lab and the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Chasing Shadows follows the work of Citizen Lab, the world's foremost digital watchdog, as it uncovers dozens of cyber espionage cases and protects people in countries around the world. This is essential reading as we sit upon the precipice where new technologies threaten to erode privacy and destabilize civil society. It is a reminder of the invisible invasions happening on smartphones and computers around the world as we speak, with enormous consequences for all. Ronald Deibert is the founder and director of Citizen Lab, a world-renowned digital security research center at the University of Toronto. He is the best-selling author of Reset, Reclaiming the Internet for Civil Society, and the book Black Code, Surveillance, Privacy, and the Dark Side of the Internet. He has also written many landmark articles and reports on espionage operations that have infiltrated governments and NGO computer networks. His team's exposés of the spyware that attack journalists and anti-corruption advocates around the world have been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Financial Times, as well as other media. Mr. Deibert has received multiple honors for his cutting-edge work, and in 2022, he was appointed an Officer of the Order of Canada, the country's second highest honor of merit. He's going to be in conversation for this program with Cindy Cohn and Eva Galperin of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Cindy Cohn is the executive director of the EFF. From 2000 to 2015, she served as EFF's legal director as well as its general counsel. Ms. Cohn has received numerous honors for her work. In 2018, Forbes named her as one of America's top 50 women in tech. The nonprofit Times included her in the 2020 Power and Influence Top 50 list, and the National Law Journal named Ms. Cohn as one of the 100 most influential lawyers in America. She's going to be joined by Eva Galperin, who is the Director of Cybersecurity of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. She has worked in security and IT for 2 decades. Her work is focused on providing privacy and security for vulnerable populations around the world. She's done everything from organizing EFF's Tor Relay Challenge to writing privacy and security training manuals, including surveillance, self-defense, and digital first aid kits, and has published research on malware in Syria, Vietnam, Lebanon, and Kazakhstan. Since 2018, she has worked on addressing the digital privacy and security issues of survivors of domestic violence. She is also a co-founder of the Coalition Against Stalkware. The event was held on the first floor at City Lights Bookstore to a packed house. It is a great honor to be able to bring you Ron Deibert in conversation with Cindy Cohn and Eva Galperin.
And oh my gosh, what a thrill to be here at City Lights, this storied place in San Francisco with so much history and so much love of books. So we're here to celebrate our friend Ron, who I think of as one of the OGs of digital rights. We're part of the Silver Hair Club here. So the book has so many great stories in it, but let's kind of start a little at the beginning. Like, what's the origin story of Citizen Lab, and how did you get into this crazy business of counter espionage against hackers?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you to everybody for coming out here and to be at this event. This is just a dream come true to be here with EFF, Cindy, Eva, all my friends here. It's just so awesome. So thank you, everybody. How did it start? It depends on how far back you go, I guess. I was saying to somebody recently, I think I clearly have a problem with authority. And it probably has to do with the fact that I was forced to go to a Catholic elementary school where I got the strap, and in a way, I have to thank the nuns for where I ended up, because I really didn't like being told what to do in that way. But with the Citizen Lab, I was hired at the University of Toronto in 1996, and for the first few years, like any junior professor, I was concerned about publishing and getting tenure. And so I was up to about the year 2000, a pretty traditional academic, just, working away, writing, publishing in journals. However, I was interested in international security, and I had a formative experience when I was a graduate student doing some work for a unit in Foreign Affairs Canada that was involved in arms control verification. And in studying this, this emerging network of technical systems that were being developed to watch governments and prevent them from cheating on arms control agreements, it stuck in my head. And also I was thinking about counterintelligence for civil society. So I had been studying intelligence practices. I was aware, governments engage in counterintelligence. They want to know what is a risk to their state, and private companies do that. But who's watching out for civil society? Who is out there trying to evaluate what risks there are on the horizon? And so in around the year 2000, I got a call out of the blue from the Ford Foundation, program officer there named Anthony Romero, who's now the president of the ACLU. At that time, he was a program officer. And it was like one of those, manna from heaven things. It was like, hey, we like what you're doing and we want to sponsor your research. Initially, they wanted me to work down in New York as a program officer, and I didn't want to do that because I was genuinely interested in the research. And they said, put together a proposal for something. So I put together a proposal for the Citizen Lab, and the tagline was counterintelligence for civil society. So the proposal is basically, if you look back at that proposal, it's almost exactly what we do today. The idea was we want to use very precise, evidence-based, at that time I was thinking mostly technical means, because I'm not a computer scientist or necessarily a tech person per se, but I was teaching classes where young hackers in Toronto were gravitating to, and I learned a lot about how you can use technical means to kind of, as I say, lift the lid on the internet. And so the whole idea was to kind of marshal those resources together, turn a spotlight on governments and the private sector, and hold them to account using, the idea of the university was important to me, using the base of the university to speak truth to power through evidence-based investigations.
That's great. That's amazing that you started with one idea and it's still the thing that you're doing. I
could have killed at many points along the way by my own stupidity, but somehow it kept going.
Ron, can you keep the mic closer?
Sure, yeah.
So one more question. What has been the most surprising or alarming discovery that you have made?
Well, honestly, there have been so many. And over the years, first of all, I should say, I'm kind of like a steward on a ship. I have so many amazing, talented people that I work with. And my job is really, steward on a ship is maybe not the best metaphor. It's more like a general manager on a sports team. Like I try to recruit the best people, give them the tools they need, and support them to do what they do. And so almost every day, and I'm not joking, and you'll appreciate this, I know you will, it's like, oh my God, that just happened. Like that, oh, now it's this. And so with everything we publish, there are like 8 or 9 things that are truly mind-blowing. The one that sticks out for me because it was very stressful was when we set out to identify who Saudi Arabia was spying on in Canada. And we had no idea other than Saudi Arabia had hacked a device in Canada. I won't get into the weeds on how we knew that part, but I remember talking to Bill Marzak, who's our lead technical investigator, and I said, who do you think this is? Do you think we could find out? And he said, well, the only way we could do it is if we actually went out and talked to people and looked through their phones for evidence of targeting on their message history. And I said, do you want to do that? And he's like, I guess. And so he traveled to, we knew it was in Quebec, so he traveled to Quebec and literally went door to door based on a short list that we developed of likely targets of Saudi espionage in Canada. And we came across the guy, Omar Abdulaziz, after several failed hits. And this was phenomenal. We had a big story. We wrote up the technical report. We gave heads up to journalists in Canada and around the world. It was a big story. And I happened to be in the Netherlands when our report was published. And I got a text message from Omar saying, "Oh my God, Jamal has gone missing. I'm very afraid." And it wasn't until that point, literally the day after that report was published, that I found out Omar Abdulaziz and Jamal Khashoggi were very close friends. They were confidants. They had been planning all sorts of activism over WhatsApp, thinking this was going to protect them, when in fact Saudi operatives were eavesdropping over all of their plans. To this day, that was a pretty dramatic moment, because, you know, I'm listening to Omar tell me about this person that he knows, and I turn on CNN and I see, like everyone else, oh, he's gone into the consulate, he hasn't come out, what's going on? And then everything that unfolded after that.
Oh, that is awful. Well, let's, you know, many of these stories have the awful part of them, and Saudi Arabia is a, you know, frequent
Awful
flyer
place.
on this. And since we're EFF and since we are in litigation around this a little bit, I'd love for you to tell the story about Loujain al-Hathoul.
Yeah, there's another, you know, just amazing story of somebody who, wow, I mean, where do you even begin what this person has been through, all because she's a women's rights activist, principally advocating for a woman's right to drive a car, and has, because of that, been harassed, arrested, detained, tortured horribly, really significant from the kind of, putting aside that stuff for a minute, I'll get back to that in a minute, but from the technical side, we actually analyzed her iPhone and captured Pegasus spyware, which features prominently in the book, one of the better known mercenary spyware tools out there manufactured by NSO Group. And it was a so-called 0 day against Apple, and we made the responsible disclosure to Apple, which triggered a bunch of things that Apple did afterwards. You know, an emergency security patch improving everybody's security, but then Apple sued NSO Group. They later dropped the lawsuit for various reasons, but they sued NSO Group, and they did notifications to victims, and they introduced a new feature called lockdown mode, all from that one case, which was a really big impact. And when that came out, I remember saying to people, you know, your phone is now much more secure than it was last week, and you have Loujain al-Hathoul to thank for that, because it's a very brave thing for her to do. A lot of the lab's work is technical, but not all of it. The technical stuff gets a lot of the attention, but we spend as much time working one-on-one with victims and trying to understand what the impact is on them psychologically and emotionally. And I spent many, many hours speaking to her, interviewing her as part of a larger project. And honestly, it was unbelievable to hear what she went through. I mean, it's believable in a way, but it's just a reminder when we speak about these entities, these bad actors, it's important to remind yourself, this is not something abstract. This is not like a cartoon character. This is very real. These people reach into people's lives and destroy them. And hearing from her what she went through was, frankly, it was a little bit traumatizing to me and my staff. We did this for more than 80 women, interviews over many hours, women who experienced this type of targeted espionage, to understand the gender-based components of all of this. And it was hard to do those interviews and listen to these stories, which is equally important as all the tech fancy stuff that we talk a lot about.
I think that's right. I mean, I think it can be easy to get caught in the technical stuff and the cloak and dagger piece of all of this. But what I've really appreciated about your work at Citizen Lab for a long time, and what we try to bring as well at EFF, is that, you know, it lands with humans, right? These are the people who get impacted by this. And, you know, Spy versus Spy is really interesting when it's in Mad Magazine, but when it's actually people's lives, it's a whole other thing. So for people who don't know, EFF has a lawsuit on behalf of, and David Green, who's leading it, is here, on behalf of her against NSO Group to try to bring some measure of accountability here. Sadly, Apple did drop the case, and Apple dropped the case because they were, there's so much spy versus spy going on here that Apple didn't feel like they could reveal how they figured it out without that itself getting out and being used to hurt other people. And I think it's highly unfortunate because we'll do the best we can, but Apple had in many ways an easier path to try to bring accountability. But if they can scare a company like Apple out of bringing accountability, I think that really shows the level at which we need to step up, kind of helping people get more secure, and finding ways to get accountability that don't put things at risk like this.
Absolutely.
I'll just ask the next question. I'll hand it back to Eva. Sorry, I'm stealing it.
I feel like I'm on a TV panel show.
I know. Well, we don't know, and we can all just talk together, right? If Eva has something to say, because she does this work. I'm just the lawyer, right? But Eva also does this work as well. One of the things about this community that I'm going to try to lighten it up a little bit is there are a lot of characters in this community, and people who are really interesting folks to hang out with. And I know you have a couple on your staff, and you've come across a couple, and I wondered if you could tell some stories, a story or two about kind of, there's a dark side to this work, but there's kind of you get to work with really interesting people, I think.
Very much, and Eva's one of them, I will say right now, and Cooper back there. There are many people that I've been fortunate enough to collaborate with, and let's hear it. Martin back there. Many people over the years. It's one of the great things about being involved in this space. I mean, human beings are complicated people, and it's, there's always something going on with people that, whether it's egos or something else that you have to deal with. But the flip side is to be surrounded by so many talented, dedicated, ethical people makes your job so rewarding. And I feel like I've won the lottery in that respect. To wake up at, like I said, every day, and it's like, oh my God, this, there's one person on my team, Bill Marzak, who I mentioned already, and Eva knows him well, and she will attest to this, that, he is amazing. It's just like, wow, how do you do that? He the way in which he kind of navigates through the recesses of the internet and all of its many aspects and zeroes in on things, it's like, this is a very special person. So I feel like I have a duty to do whatever I can to prevent this guy going to the private sector and just disappearing, because he could make a lot more money doing that than working for me. Another one is our buddy JSR, that probably everybody in this room has interacted with at some point or another, or maybe if you haven't, you will soon. He is an extraordinary person. It's just however they created this guy. I don't know what
in a lab
or something. I'm sure he'll figure out the stream and then correct me on something. There'll be. Anyway, these are truly awesome people to work with, but what's most important is the dedication and the ethics. You can't do this job if you're, you could do this job if you don't work all that hard, frankly. It's not about really working hard, but you can't do this job and be unethical, because to do this job properly, people and if you're doing it well, many bad actors are coming after you, and they're going to look for every possible opportunity to find something, some little nugget that they can use to discredit you. And if you're cutting corners, if you're doing things improperly, that will show. Eventually somebody will find that out, and it'll ruin your organization. So I guess, for me, that's the best part. But also, we're the Citizen Lab, like EFF, like many other groups, we're not standalone organizations. We're part of this community of people, and this community is very robust. And right now, I'll say, I'm sorry to bring up the topic that probably no one wants to bring up, but I'm a Canadian here, and maybe I have a right to say something right now about this, but one of the bad things that's happening is the hollowing out of global civil society right now. Citizen Lab does not take money from any government, let alone the US government, so it's not hurting us directly at all what's going on, but this chainsawing, hacksawing of organizations that do, for whatever reason, take money from the US government is really enfeebling this network of people. It's a real crisis right now, and I'm genuinely concerned about the future of our work when people are desperate, because what they'll do is they'll have to find work somewhere else. And then all of the connections that we've made over the last 25 years will start to erode, and that will make a lot of people less safe. And that's what I'm really concerned about. Not so much what's happening here, but globally, you can see the repercussions of this already.
Here we go. So, what keeps you going? What advice would you give to young researchers and activists interested in digital rights and cybersecurity?
There's a certain adrenaline rush that comes from doing this, and I think part of it has to do with like the hunt part, and you know what that's like as well, Eva. Like you're, Cooper as well. Like you're on the hunt, right? You're like, oh, this is like a mystery. We're going to solve it, and But beyond that, though, there's something else, which is, it gets back to what I said right at the beginning. I guess I have a real problem with authority, but also I don't like bullies. It's the one thing that I can't stand is a bully getting away with something. And so what keeps me going is this adrenaline rush combined with the thrill of the hunt, but it's not just a hunt for any reason. I can't imagine even, I'm sorry to say this, don't want to offend anybody, but I couldn't kill an animal or any being. That thrill of the hunt is, I'm speaking metaphorically, it's doing justice against people who are causing others harm and standing up to bullies, not letting bullies get away with stuff. Like listening to Lou Jane and all that she went through, it's infuriating. Like, who is this guy that's commandeering this? Like, why does he get to do it? Just because he's some rich plutocrat somewhere? Like, screw that. Like, I'm going to use every possible means at my disposal to hold them accountable. And, I've got this flimsy little thing called tenure and academic freedom. Means nothing, really. Don't spread that word, but I'm resting on it, hoping that gives us some protection to do what we do.
So researchers sometimes come to me and they sort of treat me like I'm some sort of research fairy, and it is my job to hand out research projects. They ask me, so what should I go investigate? And what I tell them is, go look where no one else is looking. Be a lazy engineer. When everyone is looking for particular types of malware or looking at a particular vulnerable population or trying to solve a particular problem, it's really hard to make a dent in it, to make any kind of original contribution. But if you're looking where nobody else is looking, if you're able to look at a room and see who's not in it and go meet needs that are not being met, then anything you do makes a difference. And I feel like that is really sort of at the heart of what Citizen Lab does. Because when you started Citizen Lab, civil society did not have any kind of information security or threat intelligence prowess. And now they do. Can you talk a little bit about how your relationship to the sort of private sector and its reports on what's happening in the spy versus spy world have changed over the years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, many years ago, only a few people might remember this, we published really arguably the first evidence-based report on cyber espionage ever, called the GhostNet report. And that was about a China cyber espionage campaign that started when we discovered that Tibetan organizations and the office of the Dalai Lama were being spied on. And we effectively wiretapped their computers with their consent and analyzed, discovered, yeah, they're hacked, and here are the operators in China. And then we came across all these other victims, and they're like ministries of foreign affairs and embassies and so on. And at that point, this was 2008, late 2008, there really wasn't anything published like that. I mean, of course, people knew cyber espionage was happening. There, of course, all sorts of stuff in the classified area, and maybe within companies they knew this was going on. But people didn't actually disrupt and publish about something like that. And I remember just prior to publication, I had reached out to John Markoff, who at that time was at the New York Times, to give him an exclusive on this report. And somebody, a friend of mine, not even somebody in the lab, said, you guys should name the network. And so Nart Villeneuve, who was the lead technical researcher at the time, said, oh, GhostNet. We're going to call it GhostNet because they're using GhostNet. I'm like, okay, GhostNet, great. Tracking GhostNet, that's the title. There it is. And afterwards, after this report came out, a huge private sector industry just took off. And of course, part of that is to name the threat campaign. So I feel like
everybody loves the part where you get to name the actor.
Yes, all these different names. You know, the private sector in this space, I think it's obviously good to have all of these companies doing this stuff. They do it for profit. They usually have something to sell alongside of it, which distinguishes what we do from what they do. That doesn't mean what they do is bad. In fact, we collaborate a lot with those groups, and it's very helpful to have them. I think people who work for a lot of those companies, they see what the lab is doing, what EFF is doing, and what other organizations, Access Now, Amnesty International, we should mention as well, doing this type of work very effectively. I think they all look at it and go, okay, those are the people that are doing what we're doing, but they're doing it for good, so to speak. So let's try to help them out when we can. And that's the good side. But sometimes there's some weird competitive things that comes from just that it's a business on their side. We're not a business. We don't have the same sensitivities. But those are usually pretty easy to overcome.
Thanks.
I'm going to try and read the questions.
Oh yeah, well, you saw them. I sent them to you. Yeah, this isn't this isn't one where I'm going to spring anything on him. But of course, it wouldn't be an EFF event if I didn't ask you to tell me what gets in your way. What kinds of laws and policies do we need to think about in order to make the way easier for? I think both people trying to catch people who are spying, but also people protecting themselves from the spying in the first place.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for that question, because this is, as director, this keeps me, if anything keeps me up at night, it's worrying about that. It's like, okay, what are the risks to the organization? And some of them are legal. In fact, I was a bit surprised because there was a time when a lot of people were advocating for litigation in this space, and you're all representing a victim. That's good because you want to bring people to justice and hold some accountability in this area. And the way to do that properly is sometimes through the legal system. But it didn't really dawn on me until we got sort of drawn into that. And I'm not talking about being sued, actually. I've been sued many times, and that's a whole different thing. I'm talking about just the process of litigation, once you get into discovery, how that can actually make, even if you're not a party to the litigation, but you're involved in it in some manner, as we have been in some of these cases, you need to protect yourself. You need to protect your staff, and because the other side is going to be very adversarial. And that all costs a lot of money. Like, I didn't, wow, okay, I'm paying lawyers in the United States a lot of money. And those are people, the other thing they don't realize is these are precious research grants. It's not like we have some spigot that we're just turning on to pay for this. It's like, now I can't hire somebody this year because I've got to pay, these legal fees. So I've been sued many times. The University of Toronto, actually, I want to say, has been extremely supportive. They've been, never once have I had anybody at my university say, do you think you could tone it down? Do you think you could change what you're doing? We're a bit worried about, it's true, they're not irresponsible. They're of course thinking about costs, and but we do it amicably. That, look, we support what you do. We want to keep you doing it whatever way it happens. They provided external counsel that we can go to. That's pro bono from the council. So a lot of things are the university does is great. But the threat of like some kind of litigation or being involved in all of that is a big risk to the lab. And I think there should be, I mean, I'm asking you, the lawyer, maybe there are ways to carve out laws to protect this type of research so that it has protection. There are all sorts of other risks that keep me awake at night that frankly no law can protect when you're dealing with despots and, people who just, act with impunity and they don't care about the law. Those are the people that we're up against. And that really does keep, I don't know, other than being very mindful and deliberate about risk mitigation, there's not much you can do about that. If you're successful, that comes with the territory.
So, Citizen Lab has really been on the cutting edge of uncovering cyber mercenaries, these private companies that build surveillance software that they sell directly to governments that they then use to spy on people. It started with Finfisher and Hacking Team, and gone through NSO Group, and now Paragon and Bell Trucks and Cytrox and other trucks. Where do you think this is all going?
So I think that this is the mercenary spyware industry is part of a larger global surveillance marketplace. And if we were having this conversation maybe a year ago, I would say that things seem to be moving in a slightly positive direction. President Biden signed an executive order. I write in the book, actually the book kind of leads up to this moment where that happened. And that was a big deal. Like, the president signing an executive order prohibiting U.S. federal agencies, 18 intelligence agencies, from purchasing spyware is a big blow to those industries, putting them on sanctions lists, sanctioning individuals involved in those companies. So all of that was leading in a direction that I think gave us some positivity. But of course, now that's all in question. And furthermore, the industry is just proliferating. It's not just Israeli-based companies. There are European companies. There are companies that used to have some Israeli connection that are migrating to jurisdictions so they can evade even, believe it or not, Israel's export controls and the licensing that they have to go through in Israel because it's too strict for them. So they're going to find another jurisdiction. And it's all being, let's not forget that this rests on top of an ecosystem that by design is invasive and is constantly exploiting people's personal information for surveillance capitalism, basically. So that as long as that exists, it's what these firms, they're like parasites, they feed off of it. And I don't see any easy solution to that right now, which is a kind of depressing thing to say. But it does mean that there's more work for us to do as organizations, you and me and all of us.
Job security.
Yeah.
I would say I would pull a couple things out of that and maybe flip it around for a second. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I would say, the flip side of it's all built on top of surveillance capitalism is we need a comprehensive privacy law. That's just a business model that is problematic, and it's problematic in big ways, and it's problematic in small ways, and it's problematic in deadly ways, which is the place where you sit. I think the other thing I would maybe pull out of that is we need to focus on making, tools as secure as possible, which means defending encryption wherever we can, and the other kinds of security tools. This idea that government should have an automatic backdoor, looking at you, UK, and apparently Sweden now, into our tools, I think, it just creates more ways in for, not just the malware is always going to be there. I don't think we're going to ever have a very secure, a completely secure thing, because as you point out in the book, software code is leaky. It's very hard to make it entirely secure. But I feel like sometimes we're not even societally on some really key ways even trying. I mean, again, some companies are trying, some organizations are trying, but like you wouldn't be attacking encryption and security tools if what you were really trying to do is make the internet safe. So, I mean, that's my soapbox, but I think that, you know, some of the stuff that you're saying about the problems that we're facing are things that if we flipped around and said we just aren't going to do those as a society anymore, we could make it much harder for people making malware, and we could make it much less okay as a business.
Yeah. Well, I agree completely. I mean, we have usually, like with every report, a long list of recommendations that government should do and so forth. And I don't want to bore people by spewing them out here. But the problem, especially with governments in this space, is they're highly conflicted. They're kind of schizophrenic. You know, governments are not monolithic. So you might find people within government they would be nodding along with what you're saying. Yeah, of course, that makes sense. But then there are other people, usually on the dark side, that disagree, and those agencies wield a lot of influence within government. They draw enormous resources. Usually the intelligence agencies are the most well-resourced, biggest budgets, and they're largely immune from oversight and scrutiny. I mean, we have oversight to some degree, mixed if you go across the world. Most of them really don't have any effective oversight, so they operate in this kind of extra legal realm. And that means these topics keep coming up. I mean, I have a historical chapter where it's basically the going dark debate from 93 or whatever, and maybe there were even earlier versions.
Yeah, I've had some early internet people tell me that the crypto wars that I fought in the 90s were not the first crypto wars, and there were two more before that. I have no reason to distrust these people, but that's older even than me. So yeah, I think these things go way back, and but again, I think there are times where we've done better and times where we've done worse. I think the executive order that President Biden signed was good. I think that some of the work that people did to try to stop the government from hoarding 0 days, the U.S. government from hoarding 0 days, is other work that we didn't entirely succeed, but we put some pressure on them with the idea that the 0 days are. The idea that if the government finds a flaw in a piece of software, they should tell the company so the company could fix it and not hoard it so that they can use it themselves in their own affirmative attacks. And conversations that we've had with people in three-letter agencies about maybe spend a little more of your energy on defense and a little less on offense as a way to kind of protect the people who you're supposed to be protecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, but that these are all, I just think that sometimes we can feel a little like that we're outnumbered and outmanned and there's no way that we can, really make progress, but that's not really true. It's just that we go up and back and up a little more and back a little more, and we protect a lot of people along the way where we can. But we're ultimately, you're right. I mean, we're going up against, in these kinds of fights, the intelligence agencies, which don't have to be upfront and public in presenting their side of the conversation very often.
Yeah, I'll just say one other thing too, getting back to a point I made earlier about the global community. That definitely was another success story to see. We did start out, I wouldn't say alone, but for a long time it felt like we were the only ones doing exactly what we were doing. And now it's not like that at all. Like Amnesty International has this tech lab doing fantastic work. Access Now does work in this space. They have a 24/7 digital helpline. Like if I would transport myself in a time machine 10 years ago and someone told me it would look like this, I would go, oh, that's nuts. Like I wouldn't have believed it. And here we are, like this amazing, robust community of people working on this stuff. Lawyers, activists, technologists, and so on. It's really a credit to the community. But, it's also, I think it's our job, especially my job, to be cut out to kind of look for the risks. I realize my brain is hardwired that way. It's like, okay, everything looks good, but what about what's going on in that other room? I think we got to be worried about that. And that's kind of how we're cut out in the lab.
So about what's going on in the other room being the United States. So much of your work has been focused on empowering journalists and activists often people who are standing up to authoritarian states to do their work in the face of authoritarianism. I like to think of technology as being sort of that last bastion that you have when all bets are off in regards to the law. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you do and how it relates to fighting authoritarianism?
Well, I think inherently what we do is an offense to authoritarianism as a principle, right? Like there's, no country that's oriented that way would want us to be doing what we're doing, which makes, of course, I've gradually eliminated the countries to which I can safely travel on vacation because of that, but so be it. This is, but the way I see it is actually, I got a strange, nerdy kind of political theory way of looking at it, which is, this is essential to have this watchdog role truly institutionalized in a way. I mean, I tried for a while to proselytize, have there be more citizen labs in universities around the world. I don't know if you remember, I was in San Francisco a few years ago trying to work with Berkeley to set up something there. And, working in other places, I thought, well, Citizen Lab can't grow. We don't want to grow, but maybe why can't there be like 18 Citizen Labs? And the reason is, I think, there are not many places in the world where it would be allowed to do this work or tolerated to do this work. The risks are too great. A lot of universities are very conservative. A lot of American universities wouldn't go for this. They're way too risk averse. European universities, largely the same in their own different way. So to me, though, it's essential for liberal democracy and to not let people who are abusing the rule of law get away with it. Is you need watchdogs. You need people who are going to discover what they're doing and bring it out in the public interest. And we just happen to be doing that. It's really no different than investigative journalism in a way, except we're doing it in this kind of academic setting with the type of empirical rigor that's required of us and all the research ethics protocols that are required of us. But we're using that as a lever, to smash those systems and say, you know what, if you're doing this and we can find it, we're going to write about it. And that's one of the things I'm very proud of is we don't discern. Like we have gone after Canadian agencies, American programs. I don't care. If it fits within our mandate, we'll publish about it. And I think that's the greatest threat. That's the biggest risk. If there are organizations out there doing that, those entities don't want that to happen.
Love to see it.
Why don't we open up for questions? If does anybody? Yeah, I think Melissa. Do you need mine?
I do. Thank you so much. Who was?
I thought you were going to ask a question. Sure. Thanks so much for your work and for this great conversation. At Citizen Lab, how do you come across the cases that you pursue and that you write about? Are they, do people contact you directly and say, hey, this is happening, or I know about this, or are you out there like proactively searching in these dark corners and looking for signs of, espionage against citizens? I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's actually a bit of both. So there's a lot of stuff that comes to us. In fact, a lot of stuff comes. Just as an anecdote, as a side, Edward Snowden was a guest on the Joe Rogan show. And this is like 3 years ago. And in the beginning of the interview, he happens to mention in passing me and the Citizen Lab. And he says, they're a great organization. They do this type of investigations into mercenary spyware. And Joe Rogan does one of these, wait, what? Who is that again? And he says, Citizen Lab. And they're based at the University of Toronto. So if you get anything suspicious, just send it to them. And to this day, we have an inquiries inbox, and it's flooded with the most insane stuff you've ever seen. I actually thought about creating a kind of a work of art out of it, maybe a living experience in a museum or something, or an art gallery, where you'd see these streaming by. But then I thought, well, I can't do that, because if anyone who sent that went into the... Anyway, we get a lot of stuff coming way too much out of the blue. But usually it happens in an organic way. It's a bit of both, so maybe something will come. A lot comes from journalists. Like journalists will say something, or partner organizations say this happened. A big one right now is WhatsApp and Apple, for whatever reason, they have started sending out notifications periodically to victims of spyware. And in the notification that WhatsApp just sent out, it says basically the Joe Rogan thing. Yeah, go look up Citizen Lab. But in this case, that's good, because what they're effectively doing is triaging for us. If somebody gets an Apple notification or a WhatsApp notification, that's pretty good indication something needs to be looked into. And then what you typically do is, say we discover that your phone has been hacked. First thing I want to ask you is, well, who else in your circle is likely to be targeted as well, and why, and can we talk to them? So you do a kind of snowballing thing like that. Yeah. The other thing we've done recently is actually set up booths. I write in the book about a couple of these incidents and what came of them. Some profound cases have come from, and actually it was JSR's idea, we should set up booths. And we're like, booths? What are you, crazy? Like, no, we don't want to. No, it's a great idea. Like a booth, okay, So at big events like RightsCon or, the Oslo Freedom Forum, or I was at the Global Investigative Journalism Conference, we actually have a booth and we check people's phones on site after reading them through the consent process. And, you don't get a lot of hits. Sometimes you go to an event and you get no hit. But every person you talk to is super interesting, right? And they've got a story to tell. And that's just fascinating from just a ethnographical perspective, is to have these interactions with people. But once in a while, someone does. One person who did in this manner was named Karine Kanimba. She's a Rwandan, and she was advocating for her father, who was basically kidnapped and rendered to Rwanda, was in prison for a long time. She was advocating for his release. We discovered her phone was hacked, and Amnesty International also discovered her phone was hacked. That was very significant because it turns out her phone was under surveillance at the very time she was advocating for her father's release to US government officials. And when that was discovered, when she disclosed this to the House Intelligence Committee, there's nothing, you can do more to get yourself on the radar of US government officials than to say, oh yeah, we've been spying on people you've been talking to. So that was bad news for NSO Group. And it was only because we had a booth and that person walked up to that booth. So that's sometimes how it happens like that. Yeah.
I just so Adam feels better, because I am in his calling circle. JSR just checked my phone in Taiwan, and I got a clean bill of health.
Hold it close to you.
For those of us in the public who are not, on anybody's big radar screen, do you encounter cases for those of us who, mostly probably just deal with spam or phishing, stuff like that?
Yeah, many times actually. And, these are actually some of the most profound when you're talking about what, the stories that impact you. We had one case where we unearthed a massive domestic espionage operation in Spain targeting Catalan civil society. Jaw-dropping, like 65 Catalans had their phones hacked. The president of Catalonia, the last three, unbelievable. And so when I was there and meeting some of the victims and talking to them, one of the encounters I had was with family members of one of my own researchers, Elias Campo, who we discovered in the course of our investigation, he himself was being targeted. And out of just abundance of caution, we said, we should check your family members' phones. Oh, but they're not political at all. They're not, father's a internationally renowned physician, mother's an oncologist, sister is a lawyer. All their phones were hacked. And these are people that, you'd think would have nothing, they would be on no one's radar. The only reason their phones were hacked was because they wanted to get access to Elias, our researcher. And that just, for us, that happens so often, unfortunately. We have a term for it called relational targeting. So it's very customary for us to ask people, like, can we check your partner's phone or your daughter's phone.
Hey, esteemed panel. I hope you all are doing good. I just wanted to ask, what can this audience do to support you, Ron, other than buy this book? I know you'd be chasing the shadows, so what else can we do? Thank you.
You know, the best thing I think for people in this space would be to support this bookstore. Somebody was mentioning earlier about, you know, honestly, the world we're in is so messed up, and a lot of that has to do with these addiction machines in our pockets. People need to read more books. So you could be doing me a big favor, support this bookstore and other independent bookstores like them.
I have a meta-level question, but first I want to express a thank you to EFF. 20 plus years ago, I was a research scientist at NASA, and I was inadvertently a whistleblower. And what I experienced was unbelievable, and EFF was fantastic. Nice. So, but my meta-level question is, I am doing something right now in this domain of what I call collaborative intelligence, which is basically about coalition building. It's not really legal, but it's a question of how you build coalitions. And I feel, and I'm really curious to know all of your points of view on this, that we really need with relation to what's going on in the US, that we need a global condemnation, and that it almost has to start from some kind of big project that has bases outside the US. And in ways this is happening with the, you know, what's happening to the US currency and the plummeting stock market and the realignment of nations. But I'm curious to know, because it seems, I would think EFF would feel at threat right now.
Yeah, that's for you.
Yeah, I guess that's for me. Yeah, I mean, we're paying attention. We use a lot of security inside the organization. I mean, we tend to think of ourselves as the defenders of the people who are doing the thing rather than the people who are doing the thing. Although, again, I've got Eva and Cooper here, and they do the things sometimes. But so, you know, we're not feeling directly threatened. As Ron pointed out, you know, there's a global digital rights movement that is suffering right now because I think fully a third of its money got pulled summarily. We don't take any government money, so we are in a position where we're working with a lot of those groups, trying to help them figure out what their moves are, and we may considering litigation around it because it's actually not legal the way this thing happened. But so, you know, at least at the moment, we're not feeling like we're under threat, and I think that's good, because what we want to be is able to help other people, and, you know, that's our, you know, highest and best good. I'm a little like Ron in this, that, you know, the energy from being in a time when what you do is needed is one of the things that sees you through the dark moment. And I feel like, you know, EFF was born for this. We were born for a time when you had to navigate a hostile government and try to help protect people in that moment. So there is a, you know, I've been saying I'm a little like the, you know, the emergency room doctor. Like, I'm really sorry the accident happened, but I'm here, ready, and we're going to do what we can to try to make it better.
If I might add to this, one of the things that my team, which Cooper is also on, does at EFF is we go around to other civil society organizations and we help them to organize securely, to really get their digital privacy, security, safety plan in place before they start organizing, before it all starts going terribly wrong. And let me tell you, I have been extremely busy just this week. I don't sleep a lot. So like Cindy said, we are extremely ready for this moment. I spent more than a decade traveling all over the world, talking to civil society, talking to people in states where authoritarianism was on the rise, And I have helped people to solve this problem and to organize under much more difficult circumstances than this. So, you know, come at me.
Hi, my name is Scott. I've been back up this way in like 12 years, so I say I'm just bowing down to Ferlinghetti. I miss him, man. He's a kind gentleman. When I knew him. Beyond that, I have to say, yes, there's digital and whatnot, but there's physical whatnot. You know, when we sit here, we cry about like all the digital whatnot. The truth is, there's physical whatnot, and we miss that. I'm not trying to cry about it, but I'm saying, screw the digital. Who gives a fuck about, you know, your whatnot, you know, passwords and whatnot? I asked Scott, I hate to even use my own name, but I'm saying is, we have wealth of knowledge in this whole entire crew of people. Lovely people, obviously, the community. They support each other. And when I came back up here from SoCal, because I love this town, and I love the freedom we all give each other. But the thing is, basically, yes, I myself, for 3 years, my family with their finances and whatnot, tried to get rid of me. I hate that. But you know, there's nothing about it. This town is freedom. Literature is freedom. You know, our words are freedom. You are freedom up there. I'm saying so. And everybody here knows him. And we do so. We free each other. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Oh, you have an honor. Okay.
And David asks, Citizen Lab and EFF have been at the front for decades. Who do you see as the future pillars of privacy and security in the future generation?
For me. Well, I hope EFF and Citizen Lab are all around, and inside our organizations, we have the next generations that I hope we're doing a good job of bringing up. But there's a, you know, there is, as Ron said, there is a broad community of people who are doing this. I mean, my friend Matt Mitchell is here, does Crypto Harlem, and you know, like really amazing next gen, you know, kind of work with people in frontline marginalized communities. There's lots of people all around the world. So, you know, I think, you know, in the past 10 years, Amnesty International has spun up a good team as well. But I suspect that the leaders might not. I mean, again, I want EFF to be in the forefront for a long time. But I suspect if you look in local communities around the world, you're going to find where the local folks are who are going to spin up and stand up in their communities. I think. You know, especially in this time where we've got a lot of government pressure, it's probably not going to be big national level organizations where the real power is going to come from. I think it's going to come from much more local and much more, many more people.
Yeah, I'll just add something from where my perspective as a university professor to this question, because I actually teach a specialized graduate course, which is essentially about the Citizen Lab and the work that we do, and it's meant for master's students and PhD students. But then I teach a very large first-year course, broadly speaking, on social media and democracy, and the enrollment is well over 1,000. And a lot of professors don't like doing that, especially ones at my age, but I very much cherish that because You're getting young people straight out of high school, and the energy is so palpable. And unfortunately, universities, are so twisted into this logic of being job creation machines and worrying about like where the next endowment's going to come for some building that's, and students are trapped in that. They just mostly care about getting jobs coming out of university. So if you can get them early, and I'm speaking to like if there are any other academics out there, like think about what your role is and the impression that you can have on these young people to inspire them to think more broadly than just where am I going to get a career. That's important for them, of course, because it's harder now than ever. But you've got this great opportunity to get at people young and really motivate them. And that's why I like teaching that first year course.
Sorry, thank you. Hi. I'm just thinking, right now in the United States, it seems like it's such a fear-based society. From the people in our government, from regular citizens, everybody's afraid of doing anything. And how do we turn this around before we pass a point of no return?
Yeah, I guess that's for me. I've had a very busy week. Let me tell you, there is a tremendous appetite for grassroots organizing right now. Whenever people tell me that young people are apathetic and all they want to do is sit on their couch and scroll TikTok, I wonder who the hell it is that they're talking to. Because I meet people all the time who are just desperate to be told, like, go to this place, sign this thing, make these demands, do something. If there's one thing that we have learned in years of studying the rise of authoritarianism and how fascism works, it's that the sort of early days of consolidating power are really important, because those are the days in which you can effectively drag your feet and slow things down the most. And the longer you wait and the longer authoritarianism has to get its claws in, the harder it is to build an effective resistance. And on one hand, that's tremendously depressing because it means we have already come very, very far. But on the other hand, it's good news because it means every single little thing that you do right now matters. You can make a tremendous impact by acting now. And people want to do that. Like, my inbox is full.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. I have two questions, and the first one is, I understand like building a network of people who are advocates and have a strong vision, and then going ahead and allowing them to digitize that network in a secure way. But one thing it feels like is very insular, and sometimes I've met people who have great passions and are looking for people with fellow passions that match their interests. And advertising isn't something that's so easily done in those spaces. Do you have any insight into how to grow your network in a secure way?
I feel like Steve should.
All right. So one of the interesting things about activism is that on one hand, there is an aspect of activism that is clandestine, where you operate with high levels of trust with the other people that you are talking to, and you are planning stuff you don't want governments to know about, you don't want people in power to know about. And the other side of that coin is that at the end of the day, you have to get people to the protest. You need to get people to sign your petition. You need to get people to join your organization or buy your stickers and wear your t-shirts. What I usually recommend is compartmentalization. So there is a part of the organization where everybody is on, Signal group chats and has vetted one another, and you're extremely careful about what you say, and disappearing messages are turned on. And there's a social media account that says, hey, we're having a meetup at this time. We are fuzzy bunnies and come get our t-shirts and stickers. And as long as these things are sort of, cordoned off from one another, then you're playing it relatively safe. One of the things that happens sometimes when people from information security talk to activists is that they assume we are only talking about the clandestine meetings in the dark and safe communications between trusted partners part of activism. And information security people pretend that the part of activism where you want people to know what you're doing and to show up in places and be public doesn't exist. And so they will essentially tell you, well, you shouldn't be on social media, you shouldn't take pictures, you should throw your phone into the sea. And you cannot do that and be an activist. This is one of the things that I am constantly yelling at information security people about.
I mean, the only, I think, really never follow Eva Galperin after that. But I do think that, you need to do a little work to try to find the people in the community who are trusted by other people in the community, right? Like there are, there was that old school about connectors and mavens and whatever, like figuring out who the connectors are in the communities that you want to talk to and trying to get to them. Because people will come into a movement if somebody who they trust and know, and this isn't even in the secret part, this is in the public part, right? If you you see Lawrence Ferlinghetti at a protest and you think he's amazing, like I did, then you're more likely to go there, right? So think a little strategically about who to try to bring in and whether they will be either inspirational or have connections to other people to try to grow, because I think these kinds of movements especially, they kind of need to have, if not the kind of high level trust where you're on a signal chat, at least a low level trust that you're getting into something that, is consistent with your values and wants to push forward. I think the other piece that I sometimes would try to say to people is try to think about how to be inclusive in the way that you organize so that people feel welcome rather than people feel judged. That there's certainly some, there's some people who don't agree with you enough to be in your group, but I think it can feel a little intimidating sometimes to folks. And so thinking about how do you build, I say that our side is going to win because we throw better parties, right? It's more fun to hang out with people who believe in righteousness and liberty and justice than it is the people who are afraid and small and don't. That's great. Let's use it. That's one of our superpowers. But what that means is we have to actually be welcoming and make it easy for people who are not already part of the community to join it. Is that it? Well, this seems about right, actually. Do you have anything final to say?
Well, yeah, I want to thank both of you for doing this. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to do this, and everybody for coming. And finally, Peter, thank you for hosting us here at the amazing City Lights. So really had a good time. I can't tell you how it warms my heart to be here and see so many people coming out. Like, it's just awesome. So thank you. Appreciate it.